This video is going to take a look at how to add a complex parallax effect to an Elementor website. So we're going to make use of the built-in parallax features that come with Elementor and make something that looks really good and impresses your website visitors. So if you're doing this for clients, this is a great way to differentiate the website from everybody else in the pack. So let's take a look at the effect, the final effect first. And as you can see, there's depth to this image. Things are ever so slightly moving, and it really looks like there's depth to the image. And of course, this is a 2D image, and it's very basic, but this is what we can do using the techniques outlined in this video, as well as just a little parallax, and no third-party plugins, nothing other than Elementor Pro. And a little bit of manual work. So let's show you exactly how to do this from start to finish. So first, we want to find an image. So typically when I'm doing parallax effects, I go on Unsplash and look up landscape. And this gives me a ton of high quality images that I can use to make the effect. And if you saw, this image is actually the image that ends up here, and obviously it looks a little different, and I'm going to show you why we do that and how we do that. But you can find a lot of images that can be retrofitted to work with this effect. So first step is finding your image. When looking for an image, you want to find an image that is already separated into fairly visible layers, because what we're going to do is we're going to layer this image, separate those layers out, and then use them to make the parallax effect scrolling, make it look good. So in this image, you can see that you have your sky layer, then you also have your mountain layer, then you have a tree layer, then you have a secondary tree layer, and then down here you have a water layer. And you can take a look at multiple different images, and there are a lot of images out there that are layered like this. In this image, you have one mountain, another collection of mountains, a final mountain, and then your sky. So as long as you can find an image that is able to be separated into those specific layers, it should work in this tutorial. Once you've found your image, you can download it by clicking on the actual image, click download, do it in the highest resolution. This ensures that everything looks good. And then we're going to need to use Photoshop for this. So if you don't have Photoshop, there are people on Fiverr, freelancers, you can find somebody on Reddit who will quickly and easily separate your image into individual layers. So here is our main image, and then here's our layered image. And you can see that the overall image is very similar, but there's also a little bit of a difference between them. So first off, this grass, we didn't want this grass because we want it to blend into the bottom of the page. If we go back to our Elementor demo, you can see that this image blends into the bottom blue. And this blue is actually the predominant blue in this image. And to do that, we didn't want grass here because grass will make the blend not as effective. So we removed the grass. That's the first step we did when doing our Elementor site. And to do that, we simply did a spot heal brush and went over it and got rid of it. And Photoshop is incredibly powerful. The newer versions will handle a lot of things just like this pretty crazily, and I'm on a laptop, so this is going to take a while, but you'll be able to see that it's basically able to remove all the grass, and it looks pretty realistic. Obviously you can see that it duplicated things here, but it's not working with a lot, so this is really good. And we're going to simplify the image so it doesn't really matter. So after we have our image, after we've separated it into the basic layers image wise, we go ahead, go to filter gallery, and then we're going to use a filter effect called cutout. And cutout is what makes the image look more like a collection of layers, which is exactly what we want, a collection of layers rather than the image. And we found that the best settings are to set the number of levels to 7, edge simplicity to 4, edge fidelity to 1. And then once you apply that effect, your image will look something like this. And let's get rid of our birds, because the birds were added at the end of this image. So we see that the image looks very similar to this, and we also added this layer. And once our image comes out like this, we're going to take the tool called Magnetic Lasso tool and simply use it to select each individual layer in your image. So we've separated this into the sky, the mountains, the tree line 1, tree line 2, and then the bottom right here, the bottom water. And we'll just separate it out, and this is pretty automatic. Drag it across, and then take this and then cut it out of the original layer and then copy it into a new layer. So once we've isolated everything, it should look something like this. There's one layer, here's the second layer, here's the third layer, here's the fourth layer, here's the fifth layer. And originally these layers won't come out as a full background. So they'll come out like this. You've only cut this section of the image off. And that's fine if this is the bottom layer, but if you have a layer somewhere in the middle, as you can see here, we were only able to get this section out of our main image. Do you see? When you cut it out of the image, it's not going to come with a bottom like this. So what we do is we find the main dark color of the image, and in this case it would be this color, and then we go ahead and use the lasso tool, and we simply select the area around the image, and then we use the paint bucket and paint the bottom into here. And we need to have the bottom. We can't just have this individual layer without the bottom coloring, because everything's going to be moving on the parallax. So you need to have full page images. So as you can see, as each image layer gets further back in the image and higher up in the actual image, the height of the background that we've created increases. So you can clearly see that we painted in this blue background here, and you can clearly see that we expanded these mountains down, and we added this blue in between the mountains. And then here on the sky color, the only thing on the original photo is this, and we needed to go ahead and make that into this. And this is very easy. You just extend it, you find the color, extend it, and paint it. Alright, so now you have all of your layers, and we're getting rid of you. And also, just to cover the birds, we found an image of the birds, and we isolated the darker colors, which were the birds, and then we pasted it in. And you can just look up bird PNG, you can look up a lot of things. I recommend putting in birds or some type of animal into your parallax, and I'm going to show you why in the actual Elementor section of this video. Alright, so we have all of our layers right here ready to go. And I'm going to show you exactly what these layers are. And also one more thing, we just added a color gradient at the bottom of the page, and that is what will make it blend directly into the background. And you can do this using a CSS gradient, you can do this in Elementor, but it's honestly just easier to do it as a PNG. Alright, so here's our final image, and what we're going to do is select all of these guys, all of the layers, and then quick export as PNG. And as long as all of these are full width layers, you should be good to go. So make sure that it spans from one end of the canvas to the other end. And then also, as stated before, you definitely want to add additional coloring in the bottom of the layer. So basically, to sum up this section, we're taking our main image, making it much simpler using a filter effect, and it still looks good. It actually looks kind of artsy in my opinion. We're making it much simpler, and then we're separating it into the sections. And these sections are natural layers that are in the main image, and this is just how the image was taken. So it's important to select an image in the beginning that is something like this. So now we have all of this. We're going to quick export it as a PNG, and what that does is it takes each layer and exports it as a PNG. And then what we're going to do is head over to our media library and upload all of those PNGs to our website. So as you can see, each individual layer now is on our site, including our birds. and this is just leftover. But all of these guys on the top row are the parts of our parallax effect. And again, here's what we're making, and it's a simple and basic. It's not crazy flashy, but there's definitely depth in the image, and it really adds a nice effect. All right, so now let's actually take a look at how to do this in Elementor. We have all of our image layers. We're ready to set up the parallax effect in Elementor. So now let's go ahead and do this. So here is our main Elementor page, and it looks a little different because the screen size is smaller, but this is how it is. And let's break this entire thing down and just go through the whole thing one by one. So first, here's the main image. We just overlaid this heading, and sometimes it's nice to overlay the overarching secondary color of the next section just to make it blend better. But here's the image without the heading, and you can see that everything is moving as it should, and everything is working together to make this interesting parallax effect. All right, so to start, we're going to add a full width page section here. So our minimum height should be at least 100 viewing height, but this is actually 120 because we wanted to expand it to make the parallax more predominant in the page. But you should at least have it set to fit to screen, and this is a section. And then this section here has the main background of the image. So this is the sky. It's the last layer in the photo. So here's image layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, layer 5. The main background image will be the section background, and there's no parallax effect on here. This remains standard throughout the page, and it's just basically a CSS image background that works as the backdrop to our scene. Then within this section, also one more thing, this section needs to be stretched to full width, and it needs to have a content width of full width as well. And then it also needs to be 0%, 0 margin, 0 padding. All right, and then within that section, we don't even need to add a column. We can just drag and drop an image, and it will make the column for us. But once the column's added and once the image is added, we are going to set the column to be at least 100% wide. In this case, there's only one column, so we don't need to do that. We're going to vertically align the column to the bottom of the page, and then we're also going to set 0 margin, 0 padding. What this does is it expands the column and all the content in it to the full width of the page, meaning that this image layer will go from one page to another. All right, and then after that's set up, we're going to add our image layers. And as you can see, here is the mountain, which is the furthest image layer, then trees 1, trees 2, the front, and then the birds, and then our gradient. And this is the front, this is the water. So we're going to add each image one by one, and what we're going to do is we're simply going to drag an image onto the canvas, onto the full height section, set the image size to be full. Under image style, you don't need to change this, but you can set it to be 100% wide as well. And we're going to drag it into our page. After dragging the image into the page, we're going to go to positioning, full width 100%, position absolute. Don't mess with the horizontal orientation. Don't mess with the vertical orientation offset, but set it to be aligned to the bottom. And if we go back to our Photoshop, I'm going to show you why we want to align it to the bottom. Here is an individual image layer. This is being aligned to the bottom. If it was aligned to the top, our image layer would look something like that. We don't want that. We want everything to be aligned to the bottom because everything's set from the bottom. Everything builds out from the bottom. You have your first, then it builds up, then it builds up, then it builds up, then you finally have your background. So very simple and easy to do. We work from the furthest layer to the closest layer. So first we add in the mountain, then we add in the trees, and this is aligned exactly as the mountain is aligned. And what we actually did was just duplicate the styles of this image. You'll see that everything's 100% wide. The only thing that changes here is the image. The image size is full width. Everything's 100%. There's no additional settings other than your positioning, which is absolute and aligned to the bottom. And this is basically every image layer here. And you can add as many image layers as you want. The more image layers you have, the more depth that the parallax effect will also have. And we just continuously add images until we get to the front image, which is this. And then we also added the gradient, which is the same thing, aligned to the bottom, positioned absolutely. It's the same color. The bottom color of the gradient is the same color as the background of the section. And then finally, we're going to add in our birds. And these birds are added in as an absolute positioning. And we messed around with the positioning to get them to be aligned in the page. So you can see moving this will horizontally move them. And then they're also aligned to the bottom. They're offset vertically, offset horizontally to get them into the right part of the page. Now, once all of these are added, there's no parallax automatically applied. So everything's a static image. It's basically as if you were to scroll on your Photoshop, if you were to scroll the image up and down. And we obviously can't be scrolling our image up and down, but it's almost as if we move the image in Photoshop up and down. It's going to remain static. There's going to be no movement even with the layers because all the layers move at the same time. So to get the parallax and to get the depth effect, what we need to do is make each image move in a parallax fashion at a different quantity. So you'll see that this front image moves a lot more than the secondary image behind it. So here, the water moves much quicker up the screen in the parallax effect than the first layer of the trees, then the second layer of the trees, then the mountains. And because of that, everything's moving up, but everything's moving at a different rate of speed, meaning that you have your parallax effect, you have your depth effect that everybody knows and loves. So to do this, we're going to work from the back to the front again. And to add our parallax effect to each image layer, we're just simply going to go to motion effects and then vertical scroll. And then you basically add additional speed as the image gets closer to the visitor. So this is the furthest layer, the mountain layer is the furthest layer. Everything's moving up, by the way, and we're not messing with the viewport. But this is the furthest layer and the speed is set to be 75.75. Then when we get to trees, we still have motion effects, we still have vertical scroll. Now this is 1, and then this is going to be a slightly larger speed, and then this is the final image, and this is going to be the biggest speed. So we go from smallest vertical speed on the image layer that is furthest back in the Elementor parallax to fastest vertical